I'm your host, Riem Zin Labidin, and you are listening to Tech Tag Podcast. Today, our guest is Justin Kaeser. He works at JetBrains as a software engineer and also as a customer success engineer. Justin is a speaker at different Scala events. Let's meet him and learn more about his journey. Hello, Justin. Welcome to Tech Tag.
Hello, Riem.
To know you more, tell us some fun facts about yourself.
Some fun facts. Let me see. So I have 4 first names that come from different languages.
What are the names?
My first names are Justin, Darius, Sandro, Clark.
Nice. Yeah.
And besides tech stuff, I like to spend my time reading medical papers and playing games.
Cool. So, how did you get into programming?
So it's complicated. I was exposed to computer and tech from a young age since my father was also a programmer and engineer. And I did play around with it a little when I was school aged, but I actually never really got into it until I was at university studying computer science. How did I end up studying computer science? It was after school, after my regular school ended, and I was a bit orientationless. And then a friend one day called me and said, "Hey, Justin, let's study computer science." And I said, "Okay." But then it turned out I actually enjoyed it quite a bit and was not too bad at it.
So you liked it along the way after you chose it as a major and you study it.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed a lot of it. Maybe not all of it, because I always had a bit of trouble with certain types of math, like calculus.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually failed my computer science study because of calculus, and I had to sort of start over again with a related subject. In the end, I finished it.
So you chose computer science and then you changed it to another specialty, or?
Well, it's complicated again. I failed computer science just because of math, not because of most of the subjects, but they kicked me out. So I started in bioinformatics, but I didn't like that quite as much. But then due to a quirk in the system, I got to start with computer science again, but I had to start over with some of the courses. So it took a bit longer than it usually does.
That's nice. At the end, you continued doing what you liked. And during your studies, did you have some internships?
Yeah, I did a internship at Siemens, for instance, and later during the studies I started working as a working student at some companies, usually smaller ones, local startups.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I started with a master's in computer science while also being a working student intern basically at a startup. And I liked it so much there that I just stopped with a master's and started working there full time.
And what was exactly what you were doing? Which part of the system you were working on?
It depends on the company. So sometimes it was a little more front-end oriented JavaScript stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Others back-end Java, or also desktop software in some cases, sometimes with databases. Mm-hmm. So it was a mixture of all the usual things you do in programming, I'd say.
I see. And do you remember some challenges that you have faced when you started working as a working student or in your internships? What were the obstacles or the challenges that you have faced?
Well, for some reason, the first thing that comes to mind is one time when my boss wanted me to change some stupid button on the website, and somehow it took me a whole day to change the button because it was always so hard to arrange the pixels so that it worked. I was really mad about that.
Mm. And did you find it easy to start working in within a team and in different teams and work in environment?
Well, it depends a lot on the company, the team, the culture. So I found that some companies are way better suited for me than others.
Mm.
So in some that I were, there was a lot of micromanaging by the company owners, for instance. And in other cases, I had more of a free hand at what I found useful to do. And I find that usually suits me much better.
Nice. And how was your first job? Let's say the title job?
It was just software developer. I mean, I don't think the title says that much. Develop software one way or another.
What was exactly?
Like at that point, I was doing mostly backend and algorithms type of things.
Mm-hmm.
That was a interesting startup at the time. We were sort of trying to build a knowledge network by parsing news stories. So finding connections between things that happen and inferring somehow that certain events influence certain entities in the world. In the end, it didn't work out that well, but it was a really fun experience, and I made good connections, like to somebody at JetBrains, my current company.
Mm-hmm.
It was a funny story. I was actually looking for a CI tool, so a continuous integration tool that would handle our structure. Like we were a relatively small team, but with like dozens of individual small projects
Mm-hmm.
that had to work together, be built together, and tools like Jenkins at the time wouldn't really cut it. And I found that JetBrains offered a good tool, namely TeamCity, that worked well for us.
Mm-hmm.
And got in touch with one of the developers, and we found that we actually work on the same street, literally. So we met up and got into talking. And eventually, once the startup had gone heads up, I could heads down, belly up. And I was already working somewhere else that I didn't enjoy quite as much. I got into touch with her again and actually found, that there was an open position that would suit me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very happy about that.
Ah, cool. So your current job was the third company that you have worked on, right?
Well, the third company I've worked at full time,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess you have more obstacles that you have faced in your second job. I interpreted this from what you said earlier.
You mean how I didn't like it as much?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say challenges as such. I just found the structure not well suited to me. So it was like quite hierarchical and a lot of management overhead. So like just basically half the team is some sort of management.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I had a lot of agency there.
I see. And for example, if in this kind of hierarchy, it doesn't mean, for example, if you work on features, etc., you are not visible, or for example, you have an idea about a new feature or about a change in a design or something, you cannot do it right away. You have to go through different people. Was it like that?
The issue was more like that any agency was sort of abstracted away from me, like prioritization of issues. So like I could come up with my own technical solutions, but I couldn't really decide what is important or what is fun or anything.
I see.
And also like the customer experience behind it was very much abstract to me. So the most we got out of that were some dashboards of things that it's doing somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I didn't get much feedback on how the thing I'm doing is actually being used in the end. it was some kind of backend system.
I see what you mean. In general, when we work on a specific project, it is interesting if we will be able to see how it impacts user, or maybe if we experience it as users to see the impact of our work.
Exactly. So my current work is a lot better in that way.
Mhm.
Because, well, for one, I develop software for software developers. So I get my own immediate feedback on how it works because I can basically use it the next day once I get the code to build. And I also am in much more direct touch with customers, so users outside of the company, and can get feedback from them. And that also kind of relates to my more recent, I wouldn't say change, but slight shift in work focus to customer success engineering, where I basically talk directly to important customers to figure out how they use our software and how things could be improved there.
Cool. And in customer success engineering, is this from where to start creating features or improvements to the team because of the customers' requirements?
Not exactly. So it's the idea is not to specify features and priorities, but to learn about them, I'd say. So obviously we have many important customers, and so almost everybody is our customer who does software in some way or another. So we still have limited resources in terms of what and how much we can work on. But we need to have a good idea of what kind of things are actually priorities for people that use our software. So that's the main point, to figure out what people's priorities are, what kind of tech stack they use.
I see. And are you still contributing on the product after you got the promotion to be customer success engineer?
Yeah, I still am. So I'm not in that new role full time.
Cool. Do you have some learning experience, like in general, from your different jobs, etc., like these kind of things that helps you to grow in your career?
Make connections to people.
Can you clarify it?
So, of course, it's very important to make software that works if you're a programmer. But it's also very important to understand what the people using the software actually need.
I see.
So in that sense, it matters that you make connections, partially also on a personal level, to just understand your users better.
That's right. Sometimes when we try to make software, we think more about the revenue, how we can get more money out of it, maybe. And if we think to improve them based on our understanding on the customers, like this is the same as building connection to customers to gain understanding and empathy in a technical.
Yeah, you can frame it like that. And metrics can also be an important tool, of course. But I don't they replace the actual understanding, because maybe you know about, I think it was Goodhart's law. Basically, when you use metric to base your evaluation of performance, then that metric ceases to be a good metric and becomes the new goal. So even if the metric is a good metric initially, because it correlates with like what you need, what you want, whether that's income or success or happiness with the product. If it's like one-dimensional metric, then and you optimize for that, you will probably miss the actual goal, the terminal goal that you're going for. If you use metrics as a goal, you always have to be careful about this.
Interesting point. And who actually in the company would specify these metrics? Aren't the product managers, or is it also one of the role of customer success engineer?
No, we don't specify any metrics as such. So we, in JetBrains at least, we use metrics in the background. So we look at how users use the software insofar that's possible, if they share their data, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes decisions can be based upon that, but it's not a basis for evaluation, for instance.
I see. You gave some talks in Scala events. Since when it was actually?
I started with that in 2017, I think. I was quite active in 2018, 2019 as a speaker at various events. And obviously, the pandemic sort of put a halt to that.
Yeah.
I did give a few talks at online events, but I found that I don't much enjoy that because there's just very little feedback usually.
That's true. And when you started in 2017, were you working at JetBrains already?
Yeah. I mean, before that, I was also sort of active in local communities, occasionally giving a talk or doing a workshop,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't traveling much to conferences.
I see. And you made a meetup in Germany, in
Or
München.
München.
Yeah, I think organizing a meetup isn't easy because, like, first you need a platform where you would share the events and also to promote the meetup. How did you do it? How did you start it?
It wasn't hard, I'd say. Like the meetup platform, meetup.com, is pretty good at finding a bunch of people interested in your topic.
Mm-hmm.
And then with JetBrains, it was very easy to organize some space for running the meetup. And then the major challenge is just finding somebody who wants to give some content to the meetup in the form of a talk or a workshop, for instance. And yeah, after I'd done that several times, I sort of had a routine down, so it was very straightforward to run it.
Nice. And when you gave talks, was it related to your daily job, or it's mixed? Sometimes also you presented some side projects.
I did, in one case, present some side project, but usually it was related to my work, either directly about the work or tangentially related. Yeah. So very often it was about my work on the build server protocol, which is a protocol to help integrate IDEs with build tools.
And I guess that in conferences, when you present these topics, you will see and meet in person the users, and they will tell you about their feedback. And
yeah, I always find that very inspiring to just talk to people directly and just about their experiences.
cool. Did it happen that people tell you about bugs during the event?
Oh yeah, sure it happens, but for most I have to kind of ask them, hey, isn't there some problem you have with our tools? Something that you'd like fixed or added? Yeah. But yeah, most are actually pretty happy with how the tools are.
Nice. And there are some open source projects, right? In IntelliJ Scala, for example.
Yeah, the Scala plugin for IntelliJ,
Mhm.
which I work on, is most of it's open source. You can find it on GitHub. I've also worked on a bunch of other projects that are basically open source, such as everything around the build server protocol.
Mhm. I remember once I was working using IntelliJ IDEA, and I saw a link, and when I clicked at it, it was wrong. And then I was excited to look for the Scala plugin and fix the link and open the PR. And then when a new version was released, I saw my name. I was very proud, and it was only I changed the link, like just copy paste the link, and yeah.
Yeah, I made sure that everybody got mentioned who had some contribution.
I like when people encourage others, even the users, to contribute, because it makes them feel that it is also their product. Or I don't know how to explain it, but when they use it, they understand how this can be improved, or if they want to add a new plugin, they will add more value to the product. At the same time, they enjoy doing it. And this is nice.
Yeah, and they will add something that's important to them.
Yeah.
So
It's good to have some open source tools in the community, and it's also make us know more the people who are implementing them, so we can interact with them and ask them questions directly.
yeah, I totally agree. Some of the plugin developers are very often in touch with us. And I think that's great.
Yeah, that's nice. And also, your team is helping to organize conferences, right? Or sponsor, I think, sponsor or organize.
Yeah, we've sponsored some
Mm,
conferences.
that's nice. It's also encourage people to find a job in an interesting company that every day they are using their tool. And you are, when in your daily job, you are using also the IDE.
Yeah, of
I
course.
think it's cool experience to see.
Yeah, to really understand the customer's perspective.
Yeah.
I'm my own worst customer sometimes.
Why?
Well, when I talk to most customers, users, they say something like, "Oh, everything is great. I have no complaints." But I tend to see all the problems, the things that I could fix if I had like the time and energy to work on them all. But then I just prioritize differently and just kind of live with all these little quirks that could be much better, in my opinion.
What are your current challenges, or everything is fine?
Yeah, this is fine, said the dog with a fire burning around him. So there's like features I want to work on, like support for the Windows subsystem for Linux. There's probably a million small little bugs and issues. So my priority is usually around BSP, the build server protocol support. But there's still issues open in SBT that I never got around to. And yeah, I don't have a whole lot of time for that anymore, since I'm now also working on the customer success engineering. I'm very lucky that I often have very motivated interns who work on very interesting problems sometimes. Like I have one who's been working on making a standalone BSP plugin for IntelliJ so that we can expand the build server protocol support to more build tools outside of Scala, outside of the Scala ecosystem, such as Bazel. And also in the same go, try to solve the problems we have with shared source directories in IntelliJ. So as you may know, in Scala, especially, we often have the problem that we want to cross-compile code to multiple Scala versions, possible multiple platforms like JavaScript, JVM, but with subtle differences for each version. And in build tools, we can model this easily by sharing the shared code between different targets or modules or sub-projects in SPT parlance. But IntelliJ has a project model that has one-to-one mapping between sources and modules. So now we're trying to find workarounds for that, since this is a very much long-standing problem.
Yeah. Now, in general, your studies and your work were in Germany.
Yeah, I've studied and worked mostly in and around Munich, so I never had to go very far.
And also, during your work, you are using German or English?
Mostly English. There's very few Germans in the company, and actually, last year I started learning Russian, since the majority of the company is actually Russian speaking.
That's cool. And you practice English since long time?
I was born with English, basically. It's my mother tongue, you could say, since my mother is from America. So I grew up bilingually with both English and German.
Ah, cool. Nice. Do you have an advice you would like to share for the audience?
There's no substitute for common sense. So metrics are great, studies are great, listening to experts is great, but in the end, you have to integrate knowledge on your own and just take all of these points as input rather than as your final position.
Does it mean we shouldn't take the information as it is?
Yeah, you'll always need to exercise some good judgment, in my opinion. You can't just follow a ready-made position necessarily.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Justin, for your time. And it was nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was nice to talk to you too.
My friends, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode with Justin. I personally learned from his perspective, especially about how much it is important to have understanding towards customers. And it's inspiring to work in a company where you can see the impact of your work in the outside world. I'm looking forward to our next episode with a new guest and new inspiring story. Until then, stay safe and stay tuned to our next episode. Tic Tac, tackle the inspiration.